Thank you so much for showing up. My name is Ayati Dashkar. I'm the Global Youth Lead of the Foundation. I'm the Global Youth Ambassador for Haidesium Heritage Foundation, which is a Switzerland UNESCO foundation. And I'm also the host of Girls Talk STEM, an author, and artist. And I want you to take a deep breath before I start, because this is going to be a good one. My next guest is a geoscientist, a science communicator, a poet, a visual artist, and by the way, she also piloted a spacecraft, a real one, into actual space. Can we just get a big round of applause for that? And Dr. Sian Proctor made history as the first Black woman to pilot a commercial spacecraft when she flew on the Inspiration 4 mission in 2021, the first all-civilian orbital spaceflight in history, and she wasn't just a passenger, she flew the thing. And here's what I love about her story. She almost didn't make it, and she applied to NASA not once, not twice, not 3 times, and she turned that into fuel and took a path no one else thought of. And I'm just going to leave it at that because we need to.
Thank you.
We need to talk about
this. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah. So thank you so much for showing up. I wanted to ask you about your outfit first.
Yes. So you have a flight suit and you have a space suit.
Okay.
And so flight suit is typically what you're going to wear during training. Spacesuit is what you wear when you go to space. Mm-hmm. And my spacesuit is now in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
That's cool. So I've read about this moment so many times when you first went into space, and I watched the footage, but I still cannot fully imagine what it was truly like, you know? And I've read the headline version and the press release version. I want to know the real version. What did it feel like?
You know, it was the most exciting moment of my life because I know you want to go to space. Raise your hand if you'd go to space. Okay, look.
Yeah,
look at that, right? And so you think about what it takes to get to that moment, mm-hmm. and you think about all the ways that moment can be taken away from you. And so by the time I got strapped in mm-hmm. to that Dragon capsule on top of that Falcon 9, I'm like, light it up, let's go. Because I was so worried that it was an opportunity that would slip through my fingers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also most people who go into space are either scientists and like engineers, military pilots, but very few of them are also writing poetry. I write poetry personally, so I'm obsessed with this about you. And you combine science, art, and exploration and storytelling in a way most people don't. So why does that matter, and why do you do it?
Well, you know, I think it goes down to making us whole individuals. When I was growing up, we were separated into artists and creatives, or scientists and innovation. Mm-hmm. But in the past, if we go back to Leonardo's days, you were artist and scientist, right? You had both of those skills that you were developing simultaneously. And so for me, I was tracked in as a scientist early on, and I never took those art classes. I never had that ability to really explore my creative side. And it wasn't, but the interesting thing here is I've been creative my whole life, but I never gave myself the ability to recognize that. And then COVID happened, okay? And now how many of you during COVID did something creative, right? You made sourdough, or you were baking new things, or you were picking up a musical instrument, or you were doing something that you hadn't done before.
Right.
Because creativity, our own creativity, is something we get to control. Mm-hmm. And when the world around us is in chaos, it's our creativity that we lean on to get ourselves through those stressful times. And for me, it was an opportunity for me to really dive into that artistic side, that creative side, through art and poetry. And what I realized is that I found my authentic voice when I started doing poetry and art. I could express myself in ways that the science side of me could not. Mm-hmm. And that is what I found fascinating. And it changed my perspective. So when it came time for Inspiration 4, I decided to not do it as a scientist, but to do it as an artist. because it gave me a new voice.
And I think you already talked about your creative spark, but what sparked your passion and inspiration for space when you were a kid?
My inspiration for space when I was a kid started with birth. I'm a moon celebration baby.
Okay.
What that means, I was born on Guam. And the reason why I was born on Guam is my dad was working at the NASA tracking station during the Apollo missions. He was a
Okay.
hidden figure. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures. So my family was there from 1966 to 1970. And I was born 8.5 months after Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon. So hence, I'm a moon celebration baby. I'm the youngest of 4. Definitely a celebration.
Definitely.
And so I grew up with all of this NASA memorabilia to my dad on his office wall. And my parents, you know, who had spent half of their lives in segregation,
Right.
My dad and my mom, you know, particularly my dad, told me that I could do anything. So when I was thinking about wanting to be a fighter pilot and an astronaut, because that's what I knew was the right stuff, right? That's what we based ourselves off of. My dad encouraged me that I could do that, even though there were no black women astronauts. Dr. Mae Jameson didn't fly to space until I was 22 years old. So my role model was Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek, Lieutenant Uhura,
Okay.
but this whole idea of being able to achieve those dreams.
Right, and I think you talked about like diversity
Yes.
of models and how important it is to have the right idols. So why do diverse voices matter in what you're doing in science? And it's not as a nice to have, but as a necessity.
It is. It's a must-have because when you bring different perspectives together, you're able to solve complex problems in ways that you can't ever imagine. When you're in an echo chamber where everybody is the same, they just bounce the same ideas off of each other. But when you increase that diversity, when you bring in new voices, new perspectives, new ways of seeing things, that's when it gets exciting because those different perspectives often lead to ways of achieving the goal that you didn't imagine before. And so for how I got selected to space is I wrote this poem. Space to Inspire. And that poem won me my seat to space. In it, I talk about creating a Jedi space, a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space for all of humanity.
I like that. And I think you don't believe that art and science are separate at all.
No, there's art and science, and there's science and art, and we get that opportunity to blend that, to blur the lines. They're not separate, and so if you're science focused, then I ask you definitely look for the art in that science because there's art everywhere. But if you're an artist and a creative and look at the science of what you do in your creativity.
Yeah, and I think creativity plays a big role in solving scientific problems.
It does. I mean, it starts with imagination, right? We imagine what's possible. And then we take that imagination that we have here in our brain and we turn that into creative action, right? We use our creativity to determine how to make it into reality. And that creativity leads us into the science, the technology, the engineering, and the mathematics to bring it forth.
And I think you won't believe this. I wrote this 4 years ago when I was watching a video on science, and I wanted to ask this question to an astronaut for a very, very long time. Because every single time a person who comes back from space has changed in some way or form. I mean, some people say you time traveled and stuff like that, but there's even a name for the change, the overview effect. So what was the most emotional part about seeing Earth from a different perspective?
Yeah, I love the overview effect because it was developed by space philosopher Frank White back in 1987. And so it's this idea that when astronauts have this orbital perspective of our planet, it transforms their way of thinking about the world. And, they come back more environmentally conscious, working towards doing things that unite humanity. And it's not to say that they weren't doing it before, but it's an emotional response that has happened. And it's that emotional response that kicks it to a level that wasn't there before. And that's the difference, is that it changes you in a way where you almost feel, you feel compelled to do things that you may have had it there before, but now it's like you don't have a choice, right?
Right.
And for me, that's kind of like what I felt, but it was through this perspective of Earthlight. When I was up in space, I was floating there looking at our planet, and I realized that I was being bathed in Earthlight, our planet's unique luminous signature.
Wow.
And it was an aha moment for me, because as a geoscientist, I knew that the Earth had a high reflectivity, but I never used the term Earthlight. How many of you have heard Earthlight before, right?
Not
like,
me.
We learn about sunlight, we learn about moonlight, but we don't learn about the most precious light there is, and that is Earthlight. And the reason why is that when you think about sunlight is the full electromagnetic spectrum. And most of that electromagnetic spectrum is deadly to life. So if we were to be exposed, that's why when you get away from get into outer space, the radiation can kill you, because you're getting exposed to more of that full electromagnetic spectrum. But when you're on Earth, what our planet does is it transforms sunlight into Earthlight. It strips away a lot of that harsh radiation. And so when we look out here, we're not living in sunlight, we're living in Earthlight.
Wow.
And the analogy is, does a fish know it's in water until it jumps out? We live in Earthlight, but I didn't realize it until I jumped out
Wow.
into low Earth orbit, got bathed in Earthlight, and came back transformed. That was my overview effect moment.
Wow. Well, we're not getting bathed in Earthlight anytime soon.
Well, we are.
What-
That's the best part.
Right,
It's
but-
like you get to go leave with a new perspective of our planet. You get to know now this term Earthlight for the rest of your life. And every time you step outside, you can be like, man, look at this Earthlight. This is fantastic. And the colors that you see of our world,
Yeah.
this is all Earthlight. We live in a reflected world right here.
I think,
Thank you.
yeah, that's genuinely so cool. But we're not going into space anytime soon. And if you are, call me up. Well, and I think, what is your advice for younger people who are dreaming beyond Earth but without the rockets?
I think my advice is, my motto before I went to space was space to inspire. You know, I spent my career as a geoscience professor with a love of space and space exploration. And so when I came up with this this company, Space to Inspire, and it wasn't about outer space. Space to Inspire is about this space, the space that makes
Right.
you you. There will only ever be one of you. And your unique, beautiful space matters. What you do with it, what you say with it, how you present yourself to the world matters. And so when you think about your space to inspire, it starts with inspiring yourself, right?
Right.
And then once you get inspired, once you learn how to inspire yourself, then you share it with the world. So you use your space to inspire yourself and those around you and beyond.
I think you've definitely inspired me. That's for sure. But I want to ask you, we're at a creativity festival. Storytelling plays a big part in what we're doing right here. So what role will storytelling and media play in inspiring the next generation of scientists, creators, or both?
No, the storytellers are the people who spark the imagination, right? It starts with them imagining a future worth having. You know, and I think that's so important. And once you get those stories and you're sharing, because storytelling is using your space to inspire, right? You get an idea, and then you want to flesh that out because you're inspired by it, and then you share that with the world, right? That's your space to inspire. But what happens is when you do the storytelling, it sparks other people to imagine a world where they can create those possibilities. And that's what's fun about it. It's the ripple effect, right? You put something out there that has inspired you, and then it ripples And then you don't know who's going to get hit by that ripple, and then they're going to be creative and innovative and do something with it.
Well, thank you for that, because right now you seem like a superhuman to me, like literally. But what challenges did you face throughout your journey, and what kept you moving?
Well, the biggest challenge was, being a woman and being a person of color. Every time you walk into the room, the two things you can't hide is your gender and this color of your skin. And people will judge you immediately and make all of these assumptions about you just by who you are, the way you look when you step into a room. And so it's been, a lifetime of having to prove myself. And you all know what I'm talking about. Every time you walk in a room, you got to prove yourself that you belong there. But let me tell you, we all belong there. And that's the thing. We all belong in these spaces. But there have been forces that have tried to push us out or silence our voice or to, make us feel unwanted. And the key is to really, and part of that is the voice inside your head, right? Because of the way that society kind of like makes you feel, you get that imposter syndrome voice. I have it, and I went to space, right? That voice inside your head that fuels you with doubt, that, oh no, they'll never pick me. Oh, I'm not qualified. Those kinds of things that talk you out of opportunity. I'm here to tell you, don't let that voice talk you out of opportunity. Let somebody else decide if you're qualified or not. And you'll be amazed at how that changes your perspective. The most important conversation you will ever have in your life is the conversation you have with yourself. Hands down. That's the most important conversation you'll ever have in your life, is the one that you continuously have every day with yourself.
I think that's really great advice, and something I always say when I get that voice in my head. I'm 13 years old, and I'm a girl of color, and most importantly, when I step into rooms, people are waiting for this girl to stutter, for this girl to use less words and shut up and let others speak. Mm-hmm. You have to prove yourself. And what I've always said to myself, I've got to get better to talk back to this voice, to speak back to what's going on in my head, right?
And we have a brain that is malleable, and the more that you have that conversation, because a lot of it is based on fear, right? That voice will come in and be like, protecting you from rejection, protecting you from that no, protecting you in ways that you're just like, that might kill me, right, if I do this. And you got to have a conversation to get to the root of those fears and be like, well, how rational is this? I've got an example. Before I went to space, I applied to be a NOAA teacher at sea. Now, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, which is a desert. So I didn't grow up near the ocean. And so when NOAA came back to me, they're like, we're going to send you to Kodiak, Alaska to be on a fisheries cruise ship. And I was like, the voice inside my head was like, deadliest catch? I'm going to fall overboard and I'm going to die. That's when the voice inside my head is like, oh no, you can't go to Alaska and get on a boat. That's crazy. But then I told myself, like, well, is this a rational fear? Like, what, should I be listening to this voice? And I decided not to. And I went, and I had the most extraordinary experience at sea. And it changed my perspective so much that I've gone to sea like 6 or 7 times since then, to crazy places that you wouldn't think of going. But because if I had listened to that voice and I had turned down that opportunity, I would have, not had all these other amazing experiences that I've had.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because as a girl in STEM and someone who wants to pursue STEM when they're older, a lot of girls drop out of STEM because they're told that, oh, you don't belong there, mm-hmm. and that these opportunities are not for you. And what would you say to those girls?
Well, I think first, you're already pursuing your career in STEM, which is awesome, right? It starts at any time, at any age. And for those of you that are seasoned individuals, it's never too late for your what's next. I went to space at 51, y'all. 51 years old. I became an artist and a poet at 50, and it won me a seat to space at 51. Never too late to change and pivot and find your what's next, okay? And so I think the goal is to not listen to those outside forces and find your path, right?
Yeah. I think that's really great advice.
And it starts at any age. You're already pursuing your career.
Thank you.
STEM.
I always say that age is not a number, it's an attitude, and it can take you to any altitude.
That's right.
So I'm going to do a quick rapid fire with you because
Okay.
So what emoji represents a zero gravity best?
Wait, Wait, say that again?
What emoji represents zero gravity best?
Well, the emoji for me would be the permagrin, you know,
Okay.
like smiling with a big laughter, being like, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, because you're up there in space. You got permagrin. You're just smiling. You're like happy, floating around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to experience that.
Yeah.
What would be your astronaut walkout song?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. Don't let
gosh,
it get
I love that
away.
song.
You too. And here's the reason why. If you're a seasoned individual like me, you grew up with U2. The first time I saw them in concert was Joshua Tree, 1987, 88. I was a senior in high school, and they have been my favorite band ever since. Now, here's a little gem. When you go to space, you can ask for things that you normally wouldn't think about asking for. So, 2 things that I did. I'm going to combine these. I know
Okay.
this is rapid fire, but
No,
this
it's
is
fine.
funny. Before you leave to go up into space, you make one phone call. Before you leave Earth, you're in your spacesuit, you're at the base of the rocket. There is literally a phone that you get to pick up and have a phone call with to one person. And they were like, who do you want to talk to?
Uh-huh.
And I'm sitting here, this is at SpaceX, and we're all sitting around there like, who would you like to talk to as your one phone call when you leave the Earth? And here was my response. Well, my parents have passed away. I got divorced when I was 50 and went to space when I was 51, so we're not talking to the ex. So I don't
Right.
have a husband, and I don't have any kids. So I'm like, I don't want to talk to my siblings. And they're like, well, who do you want to talk to? I go, I want to talk to somebody who influenced me. I want to talk to Michelle Obama.
Seriously?
Yes.
Whoa!
Michelle Obama called me and my crew, not the day that I left, but the day before, because at the pad, it's a very personal phone call. And we were doing a documentary for Netflix. So you can actually listen to me talk to Michelle Obama. And they came to me and said, Michelle Obama has agreed to talk to you, but is it okay if we move it up a day so the entire crew can talk to her instead of
Right.
just you? And of course, I was like, yeah. And so I got to talk to Michelle Obama
So you got actually.
before I went to space.
Wow.
And she wished me and my crew, the good luck. And
Yeah.
then every day that you're in space, we got a phone call home. And again, we had this conversation. Who do you want to speak to while you're in space? And I'm like, 3 days? I'm not talking to my siblings every day. And they're like, who do you want to talk to? I'm like, Bono. I want to talk to Bono. Sure enough, it's like the second day I'm floating in space, and SpaceX says, the Dragon capsule, SpaceX, hold for Bono. Sian, Bono's talking to you. And I'm floating. I'm like, Bono. I was a crazy woman. I was so excited. So I got to speak to Bono for 20 minutes while in space. So when you go,
Yeah, for
think
sure.
about who
Now I'm
you
going.
want to talk to. It better be me. You better be like,
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so what's the weirdest thing about being in space?
I think the weirdest thing is the space adaptation. Everybody adapts. Doesn't matter who you are because you have fluid shifts, your face becomes puffy, your nose nasally, food tastes different, and a lot of times you feel nauseous. But better living through chemistry. So if you get space sick, that's okay. You can take I took medicine. So I never threw up. Nobody on our crew threw up, but 40% of astronauts get space sick, and a lot of them throw up. But that doesn't stop them because we have medicine for that. And so if that's something that worries you, And you're like, I'm never going to space because I get car sick. Chemistry. Take care of that. Go to space. It's amazing.
Thank you for that. And that was kind of advice for space. What's your advice for Earth, or the people who do live on Earth? And yeah.
Yeah, you know what? My biggest advice is, again, goes back to space to inspire. Use your space to inspire yourself and those around you and beyond. And make sure that space, the space that you're creating, is a Jedi space. Just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive for all of humanity.
For sure. And just before we go, can we talk about your bag?
Yeah, that's my space to inspire. I went to space as an artist and a poet, so that's one of my design bags.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to Dr. Sian Proctor for joining us today. Have a great rest of your con week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.